The Las Vegas Raiders made a notable change this past week, featuring Tyree Wilson against the Kansas City Chiefs. This adjustment helped him find success on the field. We'll dive into that and also discuss Antonio Pierce's thoughts on Luke Getzey's play calling, which I don't entirely agree with. Let's jump right in. First up, let's talk about Tyree Wilson. As many of you know, I wasn't thrilled about the Raiders drafting him, especially with standout players like Jalen Carter and Darnell Wright still available. Wilson was seen as a project who needed time to develop, which usually takes 2 to 3 years. Now in his second year, we're finally starting to see some promising moments from him. In fact, Tyree recorded his first sack of the season against the Chiefs, a significant moment. This wasn't just a fluke, it was a solid play where he effectively challenged the Chiefs' left tackle, W. Morris. It was one of the best plays of his career so far. In previous games, he often struggled to make an impact, but against Kansas City, he stepped up and made multiple crucial plays. A key change for Tyree was that he primarily played inside, taking about 70% of his snaps as a defensive tackle. This role is similar to that of well-known players like Leonard Williams and Quinnen Williams, who also play at positions like the 3 technique. Tyree, standing at 6 feet 6 inches and weighing 285 pounds, seems to thrive in this setup. While he can still play on the edge, his recent performance suggests that he's finding his groove inside. We've also seen players like Clavon Chaisson emerging for the Raiders, which could mean more opportunities for Wilson inside as he continues to develop. Against strong opponents, it might be beneficial to keep him in that position. Tyree faced tough competition going up against top guards like Trey Smith and Joe Thuney. He held his own, pushing Smith back and disrupting plays. For instance, there was a moment where Tyree not only reset the line of scrimmage but also forced the running back to adjust their path. While he didn't make the tackle, his actions significantly affected the play. Coaches will tell you that resetting the line is crucial in stopping outside runs, and Tyree did just that multiple times. As we continue to see improvements, it's clear that Tyree is growing as a player. He's already taken over 200 snaps this season and has improved with each game. Even after missing the first 2 weeks, his progress has been noticeable. I'm excited to see how he develops moving forward. Looking ahead to the Bengals game, the Raiders should strategize based on matchups. The Bengals have some massive tackles, and it might make sense to utilize Tyree against their interior linemen, where he could leverage his size and skill. It's essential to keep him flexible, allowing him to play in various positions while he continues to develop into a solid player alongside Max Crosby. Now let's switch gears and discuss what Antonio Pierce said about Luke Getzey's play calling. Many of us feel that the Raiders' biggest hurdle right now is indeed the play calling. It's not just the players or the defensive line, the issues stem from how the game is being managed from the sidelines. Pierce mentioned that while play calling needs improvement, players must also clean up their penalties and missed assignments. He confirmed that Getzey will remain as the play caller, but I believe the upcoming Bengals game could be a pivotal moment for him. It's not about firing Getzey. Rather, it's about recognizing when plays don't make sense. For example, calling multiple zone runs in a goal line situation isn't ideal, yet that's exactly what happened. In summary, while there's room for improvement in the play-calling department, the Raiders should continue to work with Tyree Wilson's development and strategically use him based on matchups. If they do, we could see significant progress from him this season. We went for it on 4th down and still got stopped. These failures are on Luke Getzey. If he continues to show the same struggles as a play caller, something we've seen over the last 6 or 7 games, the Raiders need to consider making a change. There's no need to fire him, simply hand over the play-calling duties to Scott Turner, the current pass-game coordinator. Turner has experience and has seen success as a play caller in the past, including his time with Sam Howell, where we saw some promising developments. If Scott Turner can do even a slightly better job than Getzey, we could start winning games. I'm not suggesting we prioritize winning at the expense of our draft position, but we need to evaluate if Antonio Pierce is the right coach for the future. There have been moments where he's mismanaged games, leading to questions about his decisions. If we had better play calling, it might help us determine if Pierce can be an effective coach. The last thing we want is to discover that we need a top-notch play caller next season, only to find out that Pierce isn't the right fit either. If the Raiders start off poorly next year, it won't matter who the play caller is. Pierce may be out the door before long. The Raiders must also address the penalties that have plagued them. For instance, Jackson P. Johnson had 2 false starts last game, but those didn't derail the team's progress too much. We still reached the 4-yard line, but ultimately failed to score. Now regarding some updates on the offensive line. Andre James, the long-term center for the Raiders, missed practice this week. This could actually work in the team's favor. Last week, Jackson P. Johnson's performance was impressive. I'd argue he showcased top 5 center potential. The Bengals have a solid defensive line, making this a critical test for him. Interestingly, Antonio Pierce mentioned that Johnson didn't take any center snaps during OTAs. He primarily played left and right guard in training camp, yet stepped up admirably at center when needed. In the limited snaps he played, he communicated effectively with his teammates and executed his responsibilities well. Given his performance, I believe the Raiders should consider keeping Andre James out of the lineup to see if Johnson can provide a spark. Pairing Johnson with Dylan Parham and Jordan Meredith could create a formidable interior offensive line. With Colton Miller and DJ Glazer at the tackle positions, we could have a solid lineup. Meredith is a savvy player, and his synergy with Johnson is promising. They've shown they can effectively communicate and adjust during plays. Dylan Parham is expected to return, allowing the line to shift back into its optimal configuration. Even if Andre James can play, I'd advocate for rolling with Jackson P. Johnson. This season may not lead to playoffs, but it's an opportunity to evaluate if we have a top-tier center. If Johnson proves himself, we can identify what other positions we need to address in the draft, especially given the depth available for guards. It's crucial for the Raiders to figure this out in the coming weeks. If they do, we could build a formidable offensive line moving forward. I was recently watching the Pittsburgh Steelers' offensive line and was impressed by their physicality. They may not be perfect yet, but they're building a strong, tough unit. The Steelers drafted Darnell Washington, a massive tight end who can hold his own against strong defenders. Alongside players like Isaac Sumalo and rookie center Broderick Jones, they're creating a physical identity. If the Raiders want to establish a similar presence, they need to draft players who fit that mold. To truly impose our will on opponents, the Raiders need to invest in the right players. If we stick with Jackson P. Johnson for a few more games, we'll get a clearer picture of his potential. Let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time for another update.